Corporate needs a lot of healing. People are going through a lot. People are drowning in this self-doubt, are drowning in this sense of I'm not belonging, but you're saying you're in a team, but you don't feel like you belong anyway. So, women are going out there, they're chasing relationship, they're pursuing men, they are the ones holding the relationships. And sometimes I ask myself, if you are doing this, then what do you want men to do? Remember, sometimes we wish for certain things, we pray for certain things, but it's within you to get those things released. God has already answered the prayers. That's my belief. But you are harboring unforgiveness, you are bitter. I always say, who do we think we are that we're never going to feel pain in our lives? You have to go through pain so that you can know when joy comes in, you're going to appreciate it. You have to be heartbroken so that when you're healed, when you're sealed, when you see another person going through it, you can help them out of it. We have to go through abandonment so that when you can know now that I do not have to be relying on another person to validate me.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Safe Space, brought to you by Tsogang Batong, where stories come alive to awaken critical consciousness and ignite transformative change. My belief is that personal stories are not only a potent tool for education and transformation, but are also a reflection of our collective challenges and triumphs. Every story told is a step towards self-empowerment and collective change. Today with us, we have an exceptional guest, someone who I had a very powerful connection with immediately when I met them. And it's because they embody resilience, purpose, and striving for a better life for themselves and for young people. Welcome, Boitumelo.
Thank you, Tato. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for making the time to be with us here today. Just to give a brief intro, Boitumelo is a certified fraud examiner and founder of Lekoko Advisory Services. With over 16 years experience in ethical leadership, fraud risk management, and investigating corruption. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce from the Northwest University, specializing in accounting and finance, a higher diploma in criminal justice, forensic investigation, and law from the University of Johannesburg, and an advanced diploma in accounting sciences from the University of South Africa. She is a former director and partner of forensic investigation at PwC and was once a business unit leader at the Auditor General of South Africa. Her journey has led her through complex environments in both public and private sectors, fighting corruption and fraud. Beyond that, she is also passionate about uplifting communities and empowering the marginalized, and is frequently involved in programs that focus on uplifting young people, especially women. Boitumelo frequently speaks in public forums and conferences, inspiring people to push through their life's challenges and strive for an ethical world. With that powerful intro, which was due to a powerful person, I'd like to hand over to Boitumelo to share their life story with us and some of the key moments, challenges, and wins that have defined who she is today.
Oh, thank you, Tato. Sometimes when somebody reads my bio, I wish I could leave the room because I'm like, are you really talking about me? But it goes to show what humility does. I've realized that in life, it's not about I've arrived. It's about the journey. And in between the journey and the destination, that is where the life is. I think most of us are always striving to get to the journey. It's like the day that I get this, the day that I get this. But I want to start off this conversation with the journey. It's about how you live the journey. It's about the joy in the midst of uncertainty. It's about still having that peace, being able to sleep without a sleeping pill or inducing yourself with things that you don't want to put in your body. So it's really about the journey. So I grew up I've always known when I was growing up, when I was in primary school, I was actually raised by my grandmother. So I've always felt so different from the other kids because they were with their mothers. So that is the first thing that I realized that was a bit odd about me. Like, why am I not being raised by my mother? Why are other girls being with their mothers and they're able to talk about their mothers when they're at school? But here I am, a primary school, going age, but I have to sort of like understand. So that was the first thing that was a bit different, and I realized that it differentiated me from my peers. So the other thing that I did is that I taught myself how to write. I didn't have to get to school and to learn how to write it. And the funny story is that
what age was this?
I was just before, going to primary. It must have been about 4 or 5 years where I was sort of like, okay, I'm going to have to teach myself all these things. So I think from that age, I realized that I had to be resilient. Because, when you're being raised by your grandmother, my grandmother was also was a domestic worker. She would have to leave like 5 a.m. And if somebody has to leave that early, she tries to make sure that everything is prepared. So it means that I'm going to prepare myself. I'm going to get myself to school. I'm going to walk. I'm going to come back. My grandmother was selling cigarettes, was selling beer. So I would still have to carry on the business at that young age. And, it exposed me because I was vulnerable. Sometimes people will knock and they want things and others try to come in. But I knew for some reason that I had to defend myself. I had to make sure that I'm not in a state whereby, somebody comes in and they harm me. So I learned to sell through a window. People who want cigarettes, they knock anytime. People who want beer, they knock anytime. But I would still have to go back to school the following day. But I knew that I had to do that in order for us to have food on the table. So those are the things that I can say were really defining moments where, one, I had to be strong. I had to learn to defend myself because I was walking, and I'm a tiny girl. So you can imagine with that brown briefcase and you're just walking and you just by yourself. But I think community and the neighborhood are protecting me, and knowing the situation has always been the anchor. So maybe fast forward to where I am right now. So I am a managing director of Lekoko Advisory Services. I'm running my own business. It's a forensic services and ethics advisory firm. And, a lot of people ask me the same question over and over again. Why would you leave, a lucrative job? You are heading a department, you've got a PA, you've got all these benefits under this economic, dispensation and climate that we are in South Africa, where a lot of things is just uncertain, or even globally. But for me, it was a purpose. It was a calling. I always had to, because I maybe take it two steps backwards. I became a partner, and then in becoming a partner, especially in that division, I was the first African female in that division in South Africa. Yes, there had been a female partner before, but not African. Nice. And I always knew that I am there for others' voices. Whenever I'm placed in a particular environment, there is a purpose about it, but it wasn't as crystal clear as it is right now. Back then, it was a bit muddy, and it felt like, okay, why am I here? Why am I always challenged? Always challenged. In me getting things, it wasn't easy to say, okay, I got these things and it was easy. But like for me to get my first job, it was already lined up for me. I knew that I was going to get a job. I'm going to do my articles. I'm going to be able to do all these things. And I knew that if I do the work, put in the hours and do all that I need to do, I'm going to advance. So I've always been promoted at the time that I needed to be promoted. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I struggled. Not that kind of struggle, but it's always been, I've always been put in complex environments, male-dominated environments that would need me to be able to say, I'm not going to have to do things the ordinary way or the normal way. I'm going to have to step in and do things differently. So it has really been those moments. And the moment when I had to make a decision that I am going to do this, because I just felt like my spirit is not free, or I'm not doing the things that I want to do, because really my purpose is to serve and is to encourage others to a point where they can be healed and they can also be uplifted. I cannot be in a room and I don't leave and people are feeling a sense of upliftment, a sense of healing. So as a result of that, I got to a point where I think deliberately God isolated me. And here's my story. I was thinking about resigning around about July because at that point my child was not well. I was in and out of hospital, and the job is very demanding. It's a demanding role, and I had to really make a decision that am I going to be in the space where I'm trying to juggle everything, but at the same time, the most important thing, which is my child's life, his health is deteriorating. The last time that I had to make the call was when he was in hospital for 10 days, and I had to be with him in hospital. I had to, co-sleep because at that point, he was not even a year old. No, he had just turned a year. So I had to make that conscious decision, and I knew that decision is going to lead me to, uncertainty. But at that point in time, I was in negotiation with another firm to join them and to head up the forensic unit. And it was quite at an advanced stage. But at that point in time, I had told myself, whether I get that role or not, I'm going to leave. One, for my child. And secondly, I need to see what is out there. I need to see what is it that my soul is fighting for me to get at. And I resigned before I even finalized all the negotiations and everything. But in my mind, I said, if this doesn't work out, what I wanted to do there, I'll do it on my own. Because I already had clients. I had clients, potential clients that were saying, we need this kind of work. Come back and, if you can come in and help us. And so I had gone there with a business case to say, this is what I'm going to bring in when I come in. I'm not coming empty-handed.
Which makes sense because you come from a consulting environment.
Yes. So to cut the long story short, those guys just ghosted me. I never heard from them. And it's not even that, they had promised me this, they had promised me that, but we were in negotiations. It would have been nice if they came back and say, you know what, sorry, we decided that we're not going ahead with the role, or whatever it is that was happening. But I never heard anything from them. And at that point, that was when I was starting to know what rejection is. It was the first time in my life that I really experienced rejection. It was the first time in my life that I felt so abandoned. And at that point in time, I was also just going through my own personal issues. Here I am with a child, he's sick, and the doctors are advising that you can't take him back to crèche. You can't even take him back to day school because he's going to get this infection over and over again. So I'm in this space where I'm thinking, am I going to have to be taking care of my child at this point because I've got 2 boys, and then at the same time, I still need to take care of everything else. I can't just say, okay, I'm just going to sit at home and do nothing. So at that point, my phone stopped ringing. Emails dried up. Nothing was happening. It was just dead silence. Even people that I knew that, if I just pick up the phone, I know this is what's going to happen. But I decided that I don't know what's happening, but I realized that is at the point when God was isolating me. So I went through an isolation period. I remember even at that time, I did not even have WhatsApp. I stayed a very long time without WhatsApp at that point. I hardly even looked at my emails. And but I knew that whenever I'm ready, my clients are ready, because I just said, look, I'm going to have to take a bit of a sabbatical. But at the same time, I'm still hanging on to, okay, but what if I made a mistake with resigning? What's happening with me right now? So I started second guessing myself. But every time that happened, there was this thing to say, you are not going back. Because I was still at a point where we're still talking about it, where I was to say, okay, but why are you leaving? Because, you can't just resign and they say, okay, bye. It was still at that point where we're still talking about it. Okay, is there anything that we can do maybe? But it got to a point where I had to make that decision. And in my isolation, that's when a lot of things that I had gone through in my childhood, like I told you, I had to be very strong very early. I had to protect myself very early. I had to learn to do things on my own. And that rejection that I was feeling at that point in time triggered a lot of stuff when I was still young, because then I started feeling like, okay, I was so abandoned. Yes, my grandmother would make a plan in terms of, okay, this is what you're going to eat when I'm not here. But I don't think we even had microwaves back in the days. I had to really learn to heat up the food at that age, very tender age. So I think that rejection and that isolation and everything that I was going through at that point in time, it got me into a very dark place. Because I always thought I can pick up the phone call and say, hey, I need a job. Because at that point, I'm starting to feel desperate. Like, okay, what then happens after I finish this project? What then after I finish? What about medical aid? What about pension? Like those things that are stable when you're under employment, I'm starting to now worry about them.
It's like your security is being compromised.
I was so exposed. But it was in that moment, Tato, to be honest with you and your listeners, that I really knew who God is. I found a light. I found peace in the middle of everything. It was so uncertain. I wasn't sure what I'm going to do with my life, but there was peace about it. There was this joy where I can just genuinely just laugh. There was no stress in terms of what is going to happen the next month. Because I'd said I want to take a 2-month sabbatical leave. So it means I was only going to start working in November. But at that point, I was like, you know what? I think I've got some pension fund money there, here, there, savings here, there, and and I was very much sustained. Although I was going through it all, I was doubting myself. I was just this fear. I would wake up and I've got this knot in my stomach about where my life is going, and I look at my child and I'm like, what am I going to do with these kids? But that is when my breakthrough happened. I got a breakthrough out of that. My breakthrough was really at that point of rejection, at the point of just feeling this darkness, at the point of, being a mother and you're not sure what's happening, what you're going to do, where you're going to get the next help from. But I must say, at that point in time, that's when then Lekoko Advisory came as a savior. And through
as a gift,
and every time these days when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh God, thank you so much for Lekoko Advisory Service, because I've got a purpose. I don't feel like I'm going onto a job every day. It's a purpose. It's, I'm doing something that I'm like, okay, what am I doing today? Sometimes I don't have projects and all that, but I'm finding myself in the middle of, I need to go and encourage, young girls about the future, that it's okay. And sometimes I'm doing conference speaking, but I find myself talking about healing, and I look into the rooms and I start talking about healing in corporate spaces. Corporate needs a lot of healing. People are going through a lot. People are drowning in this self-doubt, are drowning in this sense of, I'm not belonging, but you're saying you're in a team, but you don't feel like you belong anyway. So my messages are always about that.
You can't thrive at work now.
You can't thrive at work, or even
feel like you belong.
And even if you are thriving, let's say you're getting all the promotions, but deep down inside, you are depleted spiritually. And women are being put up against each other. Women are just there's always this thing that women can work together. But believe it or not, my breakthroughs came through women. We've got women like Triforce Ramano who can just be like, I need this, I'm not sure where I'm going. And if she can give you guidance, she'll give you guidance. If she can open the door for you, she'll open the door for you. My own mother, she's a chief audit executive in one of the entities. when she, she'll open the door for me. And I've always thought, these women don't like each other. Women can't work together, but we can actually work together. I think it's just the perception that somebody ran with, and then now everybody thinks that that's possible. But I think the only time when women can't work together, it's when one of those women are not healed.
Yes, I was just thinking the same thing, that if we were to heal, then there'd be less
Why
conflict.
would you be jealous of a young woman when you are in a position to open a door for them? Why would you be jealous of somebody who's succeeding? I mean, I hear stories of my boss does not even allow me to go on study leave. I cannot even imagine doing that to anybody. Why wouldn't you want somebody to be uplifted? If you uplift them, you're uplifting their community. And an uplifted community is a community that is going to thrive, and you don't have issues of, teenage pregnancies, all these things, alcohol abuse, unemployment. If you can open the door to somebody, why don't you just do it? Unless if you are really unhealed. If you feel that you are undeserving, you feel that other people are undeserving. Yeah, so that's how I feel about this entire conundrum.
Yeah, the conundrum.
Yeah.
So I like how you linked it to what happened in your childhood, because like I've also been going through a process where, I had to trace back and see that, okay, there's this wounded inner child that has been ignored, and, and I think it comes out when you now struggle to cope with like pressures, right? And there's this term actually in psychology, they say it's parentification, parentified children. And it's actually a form of trauma, because you grow up and then, those feelings of being feeling undeserving, having self-doubt, and struggling to break through what is essentially the challenge that you need to overcome in your life to live your purpose, because that's where our purpose comes from, right? From the deepest challenges that we face. So, and you look at the history of our country and how, most of our parents were working class, growing up under difficult circumstances. I believe that, there's some basic level of trauma that you have as a young Black South African, just because of the socio-political dynamics that we grew under, the history of apartheid and all of that. There's this people talk about generational trauma, right? So to be more specific, like what steps did you follow in order to heal? Like if you were to give someone advice who's like, okay, it seems like I'm unhealed. You mentioned that how you would know is fighting with people that you love, people that you should be allies with. What are some of the other signs, and how do you go about dealing with it?
So I also saw it in like personal relationships. I've always had this thing that, okay, it's all going good, but I'm sure it's going to end at some point. Never feeling like, okay, this is something that I'm going to see it through. I've always had, even when stepping into anything, it would always be like, I'm sure at some point it's going to end. So you always looking at the end, always doing plan Bs. So I'm such a plan B person because of that trauma of, okay, if I get abandoned, then what do I do? So always looking for plan Bs, always, looking at, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Then the other thing is, you end up in a situation whereby you've got this fear. You don't even know where that fear is coming from. Self-doubt. Look, I've always been this person that I'm very much confident. I'm a confident speaker. Whenever I'm with peers, I'm always going to be the one that's like talking, that's always being, but I realized that maybe these things had been like overcompensation, so that I hide my weakness in terms of, if this friendship doesn't work out, it's fine. And also having this, prideful, you just have this ego. I don't even know what to call it, but it's basically a barrier. You're trying to, it's a defense mechanism that even if you go, I don't care.
But I got this.
I have this. But deep down, it's just breaking you apart. You don't realize it until you are in that deep, dark moment. And in that deep, dark moment, like what you're saying, pain breeds purpose. And in that moment, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling all of these things, but also the cure to loneliness is purpose. You know, a lot of women are crying about, oh, I'm lonely, I don't know what to do with myself. But I'm like, once you find your purpose, all these things and all these stories about loneliness, and also just try, and you know, there's this whole thing about us women, and I digress a little bit. There's this desperation in the air, in the spirit. I don't even know what to call it, but it's, and I'm sorry to drop it in your platform, but
no,
women,
I welcome it. I think that is a much needed conversation.
Are desperate. You know, women are going out there, they're chasing relationship, they're pursuing men, they are the ones holding the relationships. And sometimes I ask myself, if you are doing this, then what do you want men to do? You are taking away from the dominance that they are meant to be, and you are being this dominating force. And are you expecting that there will be that submission that is coming from that? Because dominance breeds submission. So if the dominance is on the wrong side, and then we know that men will always struggle with submitting to women, and women, it's easier for us to be able to get to that submission level because that's how we were made to be. And I'm just talking about it from a spiritual perspective as a religious woman that I am. So if you are going to dominate and you are the one who's like making all the plans, you are running around after this, we are disempowering the men. The men end up feeling like, now I don't know what to do with this woman. And then we start feeling like men are not coming to the party. So this desperation, yes, we are being empowered. But the question that I always ask myself, are we empowering men to deal with empowered women? Because the more empowered we are coming into these spaces and we are dominating. We are then going to try and do the same thing. And I don't think it's on purpose. But I think because we are in this masculine era that we are in as women, we end up being in that state. But
which is getting us gifts, right? Which is putting bread on the table.
It's putting bread on the table, and we don't have a choice. But I feel like we also need to be very careful where we are exercising
that masculinity.
Yes, there's a time and a place for that. And we are gonna get to a space whereby as women now there's just it's just, I feel like we are confusing things, and we want to be women, but we are also just not being women. You know,
That's something.
So that it's one of the things that I really learned through my healing journey. And in healing, really, definitely therapy. You cannot try to heal without getting some sort of a professional person, or even, because how I started with mine, it was pastoral therapy. Where I was still with another church, and I told them I'm going through this. And then this lady said, look, we are able to give you some pastoral care of some sort. And I spoke to her after church, and I remember it was the first time that I was just weeping like that my entire life. I was just weeping, and we're having the conversation in the baby room, cry room in church after everybody had left. And then my 14-year-old was outside, and I was with the little one, and I was just weeping. And this woman was like, are you sure this is the only thing that you're going through? But it was now all the trauma from,
which you couldn't explain, which you didn't have the words for.
I didn't have the words for at the time. And I just started thinking about my past relationship. All these things started coming in, and I started realizing that I'm going to have to do some deep work. So you're going to need to do the deep work. The deep work is needed. You can't do it at surface level. To date, I'm still doing the deep work.
It's actually like opening a can of worms.
Yeah.
You'll be like, okay, I'm going to do deep work for 6 months. Then it's like month 8.
No, you can't even put a timeline to it. And I remember when I got a therapist, I said, but does it end? Because remember, even life happens as you are going through that. Now I need to start a business. Now I need to get clients. Now I need to also make sure that my profile out there because people know you as Boitumelo, so and so and so. Now you need to separate yourself from that and stand on your own and be that independent person that you've always wanted to be in and be my own brand. I think establishing myself as my own brand was also one of the critical moments, because I had to say, when I'm going out there and I say I'm Boitumelo Lekoko, am I always going to have to rely on Boitumelo Lekoko, so and so and so, I did this, but who am I? I had to really define myself. Who am I? What's my purpose? What is it that I want to do? And what am I chasing? And I got to a point in my life where I'm no longer chasing money. I'm no longer chasing titles. I'm no longer chasing who I'm being associated with. I'm chasing my purpose. And once I started doing that, I attracted all the good things. I attracted the business. I attracted the clients. I attracted the connections. I attracted, the joy.
Happiness,
Yes, the peace. And just a sense of, I'm actually just content. But I know where I am. I still have so much to accomplish. I'm at a point in my life where I know that I can be anything and do anything that I want to do. And that's what I want to encourage everyone, that don't limit yourself with your current circumstances where you are. You are passing through. It's a passage, and that passage, it's painful. You are going to be abandoned. You're going to be rejected. There's going to be so much happening. But once you're on the other side, there's this, I like this Bible thing that says, the Egyptians that you see today, you'll see no more. So that's basically what I always say. It means that, when the Israelites left, and then remember they had been slaves for so long, and then after the Red Sea parted, and then they were on the other side, I think there was a thing that God told Moses, the Israelites that you see today, you will see no more. And then they got swallowed by the Red Sea, and then they were on their way to Canaan or whatever. Yeah. So I always say that the Egyptians that you see today, you will see no more, because you are just going to pass through it. But when passing through it, don't ignore it. Let your pride go. Let your ego go. Allow the process to go. And then trust me, you are not going to be stuck in there, unless if you also need to get yourself unstuck. Because remember, sometimes we wish for certain things, we pray for certain things, but it's within you to get those things released. God has already answered the prayers. That's my belief. But you are harboring unforgiveness. You are bitter. You are jealous of people.
It's making you sick. It's limiting your opportunities.
It's limiting your opportunities, and I always
you can't realize your potential. You can't your
full
potential.
Yes, because you are so focused on other people. You are so jealous. Why can't this happen to me? Why is this not happening? Somebody's getting engaged and you're getting triggered. That is their time. Your time will come. Somebody's having a child, and maybe you've been trying to have a child, but that is their time. You focus on your journey. You focus on what you need to do. And I always say, look at what's in front of you. Take the next step. Whatever that's in front of you, it's enough for you to go on to the next step. Don't worry about 10 steps forward. We want to take giant leaps. But all I'm saying is that look at what is in front of you. It's enough to get you to the next step. Then the next step, it's enough to get. And then one day you sit in there, you're a partner, you are, you've got all these titles. And then, but when you look back at it, it was all those small steps that you were taking. The things that are just enough. You've got a qualification. Okay, what are you going to do with it right now? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Okay, but maybe now it's time for self-development, because I'm also doing an executive development course right now. So continuously self-development, continuously being aware of yourself and mastering yourself. Master your emotions. Master how you react to certain things. Don't allow things. I always say, okay, maybe today wasn't a good day as it was supposed to be, but why? Because maybe I allowed certain reactions. But go on with what you were supposed to do. And yes, this thing is happening, but it's not stopping this journey that you are in.
Yes, and if you're feeling scared, go for it. That's the thing that you need to do. That thing that fears you the most, and to not and I think you need to also regulate your emotions and regulate how your emotions affect your life.
Yeah.
When you're feeling that fear, when you're feeling that self-doubt, when you're feeling that depression, that sadness, that anxiety, don't let it affect the things that you need to do to accomplish
Yeah.
your goals.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it's hard. I mean, there were times where I just didn't want to leave the house. Sometimes just getting up and go. You know, we've got this thing of get up and go. Sometimes you need to sort of like use that time as a self-introspection to reflect and feel the pain. I always say, who do we think we are that we're never going to feel pain in our lives? You have to go through pain so that you can know when joy comes in, you're going to appreciate it. You have to be heartbroken so that when you're healed, when you're sealed, when you see another person going through it, you can help them out of it. We have to go through abandonment so that when you can know now that I do not have to be relying on another person to validate me. You have to validate yourself. You have to wake up and say, look, I've been set apart. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm validated. I'm enough. I am as beautiful as I can be. I can conquer the world, and I can do it without getting a good morning from somebody else, without somebody else, saying you are beautiful. Why can't you do that? Why can't you tell it to yourself? Why can't we self-validate? So we need all these failures or painful moments so that we can be whole.
So that we can be human.
We can be human and we can be whole, and you can just laugh without money being in your bank account. You can just laugh and find joy in the simple things in life. And I believe that, there's a saying, I can't remember where I read this quote, but it says, a life begins where fear ends. So where that fear ends, that's where your life is, because also that fear is where your gift is. Things that you fear is where your gift is. I never liked my voice. I always felt like I've got the worst voice possible. I always felt like, no, I don't want to be in a room and speak up because all the attention is going to be on me. But that is where my gift is. Right now, I speak at conferences. Right now, I'm able to sit in platforms like this and encourage other people. Can you imagine if I allowed that fear to drown me? I would be sitting here still believing that I don't have a voice. But my voice has been used when I'm in rooms to advocate for others, where there is injustices, to speak against those injustices. If I didn't use my voice and if I didn't overcome the fear of that I'm not good enough to speak, can you imagine how many people, how many souls, and even me, it could have destroyed my soul. So where that thing that agitates you, that thing that doesn't want you to move, that is where your gift is. Yeah.
And the thing about life lessons is, if you don't learn them, they get bigger and bigger. I actually believe that you were due that isolation period way before it happened. And it was a forced isolation period.
Oh, it was so forced, yeah.
And it was a life lesson that was delayed. And that is the biggest fear for me, and why I watch out for lessons, because it's either you learn the easy way or the hard way.
And that's what
so watch out for them lessons.
Yeah, that's what I always say, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this. And then there's been all these signs to say, stop it, stop it, stop it. And now how I'm going to have to stop it is probably going to be in the most painful way. So that's what I've learned with that if maybe, let's say there's something that I shouldn't do, I shouldn't go on this trip or whatever. And then maybe, or even like an individual that I know the signs that this person is like just not good for me. And then I keep on trying, like, no, but what if I'm there to help them? What if I'm their destiny helper? We've got this thing of, I'm here to just help people, but you can see the signs that no, not this person. And then I realized that if I don't stop and if I don't listen to what my gut, what my spirit is telling me, it's going to destroy me. Let me rather just leave this alone, in as much as I don't want to, but I have to. Yeah.
And to get to the bottom of what's in your gut, healing is like the most important thing. Because then you're going to have that initial fear and you're going to need to trace it back and say, okay, I can attribute this to my ego. I can attribute this to my childhood trauma.
Yes.
And most importantly, oh yeah, this one is coming from my gut.
And I think also the defense mechanisms, you must also watch out your defense mechanisms. Some people use lying, pretending, as their defense mechanisms. And that is where they need to heal. because you can't always be defending yourself. Sometimes you must just be a sponge, man, and just absorb, the world. There's so much of love. There's so much of kindness. There's so many people that don't want to see you fail. There's so many people that I know don't want to see me fail. But we are in this era of, haters this, haters. Who hates you? Who actually hates you? We've got this thing, I want to show to the haters. But actually, you'll find that there's more people that want to see you succeed than what you have got in your head that people want to see you fail. Yeah. So we really need to move away from that.
You actually need community. So having that hater mindset, it's only self-limiting. So I wanted to ask about, you said you never really had any challenges going into work. I mean, you climbed all the way up to partner level, and we worked at the Auditor General. So how did you secure that? How did you secure yourself up to the point where, your security was forcefully taken?
Yeah. Sure. So I think I've always had to be brave, even in the most scariest moments, am I going to have to do this presentation? Am I going to have to do all this work? And then, did I really put up my hand for this complicated project? I think really being brave and resilience. And also, I'm a very hardworking person. I'm just one of those people that can, I work hard. So it's not that when I talk about challenges, I'm talking about, being in certain spaces, I would be there and I'll be like, but how did I even get here sometimes? But I think it's always been that favor that I was not aware of, that now I know that, I've always been favored and there's always been this favor from God about my life to say, I am going to put you in these places and spaces. I'm going to use you to break generational curses. I'm going to use you so that other people can see that it's possible. Yes, but you can make it. You can be in corporate spaces. You can sit with leaders. You can be in all these, but I didn't see it like that back then. All that I did was exactly what I told you. I had what I had in front of me. I took the next step. I had what I had in front of me. I took the next step. I'd be like, okay, I'm an assistant manager. The next step, I want to be a manager. What is it going to take for me to be a manager? And then I would do that. And sometimes I would not even be aware that I'm doing those things. Some of my promotions happen at a point where after the, evaluation meeting, maybe my coach or my mentor, the person that was representing will tell me, I actually put you up for promotion. And they said, good. And I was like, really? I was not even aware that I'm up for promotion. So I think just not being too fixated on, I want this, I want that, and just using what you have on the next step. I think that has always empowered me. Yeah.
And as you were saying that, it reminded me that your childhood experience, I mean, we talked about the negatives of it, right? And how the healing and the trauma. But I think that was also a gift in that working hard later on in life must have been effortless. It went without saying.
Yeah, it went without saying. Working hard was just something that I naturally gravitated to, because I've always had to make sure that I hit the books. I always had to make sure that I knew I can't afford to fail. When I was in varsity, I went through, never repeated a course. I knew I have to do it once and get it done. That has always been my motto. Do it once, do it right, and get it done. And that's what I always also try to, encourage my 14-year-old teenager, which is not easy.
Yeah.
So I always knew that something needs to be done right the first time and get it done, over and done with, and not having you to look back. But there had been failures. Like, for example, I failed my, what do they call it? I can't remember what they call it these days, CTA, which is the course to get you into being a chartered accountant. I wanted to be a chartered accountant, but I ended up not being one. So those were the times when I started to experience failures. But I think I was at a point where I was like, but do I really want this? I got to that point and I said, I made a decision that, okay, I don't think I want it. Let me rather venture into, because I thought I would venture into taxation, but I ended up being in forensics. So those are the things that, I knew if I have to move into the next level, I'm gonna have to work very hard. I worked very hard to get to partnership, to get to, and I'm talking to a point where there would be the young professionals that were coming up. They were like, but is it worth it to be a partner? You work so hard. And I was like, it is worth it, because one day it's going to pay off, and it's paying off right now. These days I don't have to break down a wall to knock into a room. Rooms get open because of my experience, of where I've been, of
the investment that you made,
of the track record that I have. Doors just open. I'm not knocking on doors like, I want to do this, I want to do that. I get phone calls from clients to say, can you send us a quote on this? We need your help on this. Somebody phones me, oh, actually, can you come and help me with our strategic workshop for our board? So I'm reaping the dividends. It's worth it to work hard. In as much as people say, oh, work smart. Now I'm working smart. I can't remember the last time I worked on a weekend. I can't remember the last time I was burning the midnight oil. So I'm working smart now because
you've already done the work.
Yes.
One of my bosses once said to me, Tato, your productivity is your greatest asset.
Oh, yes. That's your currency.
That is your currency. And in your 20s, I mean, you should just be learning and absorbing, even in your 30s, and continuously, building that base for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? That you can live off of the dividends of later in life.
That's the best advice. Hey, I mean, I always tell people, especially if you're like your 30s, late 20s and whatever, and you are in this corporate space, you're killing it. And I tell them, this is the time to kill it. You have to kill it now. You have to break those barriers. You have to travel. You have to be like, you have to be that person that's like, oh, I just came out of this project, I'm on to the next one. That is the time. You can't say, oh, I'll do this when I'm in my late 30s and whatever. And I mean, life is life. Sometimes the timing also might not be then. Maybe your breakthroughs are going to happen in your 40s. You might be out there and you are 30, mid 30s and whatever, and you feel like you are not where you're supposed to do. Trust me, at the right time, it will happen. But all I can tell you now, what do you have in front of you? It's enough for you to get to the next step, as opposed to saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. What do you have in front of you right now? What you've got right now, it's enough to get you to the next step. And then each day is going to go by, as long as life is not just passing you by. That's the one thing that I always say. Let us not be in a space where life is just passing you by, because that's not who you were meant to be. You have to step into that calling of who you are meant to be. Volunteer, be involved in community projects, have a sense of direction for your day. That's what I always say, because people say we are unemployed, but there's a lot of problems that we have in South Africa. You've got a brain
and you can use it.
Yes, and you can use it. And sometimes you're going to have to volunteer. There's so much of work that I do that sometimes I don't even charge. But the value of it is that, okay, maybe out of this, I can get a reference letter that I've done this work. And later on, I might not know why I might have to demonstrate the experience. So that's the kind of things, that's the mindset that we need to approach some of our challenges with.
Yeah. So I also wanted to just ask about an issue that's bothering me. And it has to do with our apathy towards systemic corruption, right? And how it actually affects us on a day-to-day. Eskom this week was saying they want to increase electricity by 36%.
True.
Because they have a 40 billion rand gap. Why some municipalities are not paying? Why are they not paying?
Yeah.
Where's...
Yeah, so, when it comes to corruption, South Africa, Africa as a whole, and even on a global scale, we have to be honest about where we are. We're living in a country, yes, 30 years of democracy, but look at our socioeconomic issues, high rising unemployment levels, poverty is on a rise, there's crime that we are battling with. So when you are in that situation, when you are under this economy, when half of the youth is unemployed, it's gonna make corruption a social ill. It's more of something that is entrenched in our, socio-economic fiber than it is a problem. Because let's be honest, if somebody's saying, I've got a job, but I need you to give me 2,000 to sell a job in a mine, for example. You're desperate. You're the only person that's got that certificate that can at least get you in a mine. You will hustle for the 2,000 and buy that job, because the situation is such that the vulnerable are going to be falling for these things when you are vulnerable.
Yes.
However, there's people that really are just doing it because of there's greed and there's a sense of entitlement, or there's a sense of, if somebody's doing it, why not? And there's also an issue of consequence management in our country. There's also an issue of, are people that are doing corruption really being punished? We are sitting in a state whereby there are people that were implicated in the Zondo Commission, but they're still occupying high leadership positions of caliber. And sometimes you ask yourself, do we really get punished for corruption? So until we get these things that I spoke about right, we really are going to still be battling with this scourge for a very long time.
Yeah, and it even kills, right? If you think of what happened at Life Esidimeni,
Yeah, those are, I mean, and I'm also look at what's happening now with the mafias and extortionists and all of that, and also whistleblowers. If you're a whistleblower and you try to blow the whistle on a specific issue, you get killed. There's brazen killings of whistleblowers. There is a whole mafia thing to say, you've got a construction tender, but we also want a piece out of that. If you don't, then it will kill your family. And they extort money out of people that really deserved to win those tenders. So it's a sad state we're in, but I think reforms where we need to change our laws and we need to look into how can we better, for example, our whistleblowing mechanisms, our whistleblowing laws, protected act disclosures. Is it really protecting employees when they blow a whistle? So I know that those reforms are currently undergoing. How do we also protect whistleblowers while we are waiting for those things to happen? And how do we also make sure that we live in a society where people want to do the right thing without anybody looking over their shoulders? Ethics is going to be also an important aspect in employment, in schools, because I always tell people that we're always talking about all of these things in the boardrooms, but who's talking about these things in the clinics, in the schools, at the taxi ranks, in the community libraries? Who is going in to talk about these things? So that people
can get involved.
Yeah, so that people can get involved. And maybe sometimes what you think is a norm, I grew up thinking that when you've got a medical aid, it's okay to take that medical aid from go next door so that you can go buy diapers, because then you'll give the person something of a cash. But it's corruption. It's not right for you to do it. But because some things are so entrenched in the communities, it's normal. And once you go out there and you educate them and you raise awareness, it actually will make them aware that it's actually wrong.
And how does one then maintain their integrity and ethics in such an environment that's rife with corruption and fraud?
Simple. What you do has to be consistent. What you say has to be consistent with what you do. You have to maintain a reputation of you are consistent with the things that you say you will do. You can't say, I will be here, and then you don't show up, and then you make excuses. It starts with those small things. Keep your promises. If you are wrong, immediately accept that I was wrong and be remorseful. Show that, you really want to learn from your mistakes. Hiding mistakes, hiding things that you've done wrong, or letting things that have gone wrong go on for so long. Those are the small things that can really, really start make other people question your character. So your character has to be one that is intact. Principles that that this I don't go beyond. Even if somebody put money in front of me on a specific thing, it also is about your conscience. Are you going to be able to sleep at night if you do something like this? Yeah.
Thank you for your words. Do you have what is your advice to someone who is growing up and sees themselves in you, what advice would you give them?
The advice that I would have for a person like that is you have got to have an unrelenting belief, no matter your circumstances, that where you are right now is not defining who you are. What defines you is the gifts that you have inside of you. You've got gifts, you've got power, you've got strength, you've got the intellect, you've got the charisma, you've got the wit, you've got everything that you need to take you to where you're supposed to be. Don't allow where you are to drown you. Rather, rise up, from any circumstance, and you can come out of anything. I don't care. Depression, child abuse, drug abuse. You can come out of anything as long as you are just determined and you realize the power that is inside of you and you just unleash it. And you just have to get to a state of when you are not okay or when things are not going your way, surrender. Surrender the will to want to make everything go right. Surrender and say, this is where I am. And one of the most important things that I can always tell people, you have got to, your spiritual life. I don't know. I believe in God. I know, we've got a diverse range of people, but there is a spiritual world, and whether we like it or not, we're going to have to make sure that even our spiritual stamina is able to withstand the challenges of life.
And with that, thank you for such an enlightening conversation. Your insights on resilience, ethical leadership, and empowering marginalized group brought so much wisdom to anyone who's facing life's difficult challenges. From overcoming difficult environments to championing women's futures, your story reminds us of the impact that one can have through sharing their journey with others. Thank you for being here today. And to our listeners, I hope that you leave this conversation empowered to embrace your journey and strive for meaningful change in your respective contexts. This is Safe Space brought to you by Tsogang Bathong, where we uplift voices and awaken critical consciousness. Until next time, stay inspired and keep pushing forward.
Thank you.